Well, welcome back to Success in Women, episode 3. And they didn't think it'll last. Yay!
We made it.
We made it to episode 3.
You're all right.
And last week, Andrea, we were talking about people's goals and setting goals. And we set a really gigantic goal. And I was actually reading something recently that everyone's got their own opinion about, goals and goal setting. And when we talked last week about SMART goals, we talked about the fact that they have to be realistic. And some people think, well, that's really stupid. Why would you want a realistic goal? Because then it's not really big. But remember, we talked about having a big, hairy, audacious goal, meaning realistic. It's unlikely if you wanted to be an astronaut that would happen.
Well, thanks a lot.
In your lifetime at this age, with your experience and education.
Well, look at William Shatner. Come on now, 90 years old.
Well, and that got me thinking, how realistic is realistic? Because, say we wanted a goal to have $1 billion. And a lot of people, matter of fact, probably almost 100% of our friends and relatives would say, that's impossible.
Right.
So when you're looking at that realistic goal, and even though we want you to have big, hairy goals, maybe if there is something that you really would want to do, and just say, Andrew, that was to be an astronaut. If William Shatner at his age could end up in space, then maybe it's possible for anybody. And so when you get into the SMART goals, and that really just means being specific, measurable, having it accountable and actionable. Realistic is not a word that you should use to limit yourself, because what's realistic to one person is not necessarily realistic to another person.
Right, absolutely.
But it has to be time bound. And so you can still use the SMART goals.
Right.
To help measure whether or not you're succeeding in your goal.
Right.
And the reason I'm bringing this up again, I know we talked about this last time, Andrea, but the thing is, we have to take 100% responsibility for anything that we do and anything that we get out of life.
Right.
So if it's in our control, that means we've got to take the action steps to do it. That also means that we can't blame anybody else. We can't use the blame game or play the blame game of saying, well, it's that person's fault, or this circumstance happened and it's that fault.
Which people tend to do, like, well, if that hadn't happened, or this hadn't happened, or if he hadn't said that. Well, you're in control of your emotion, and you're responsible for how you respond or how you perceive it.
I love the fact that you just said how you respond to it, because there's a formula, Andrea, that a lot of people, of course, I didn't bring my little whiteboard white thing. So I'm going to pause for 1 second and go and get my thing to wipe this, because I want to show you a little formula, and I want you to be able to see it, so you can internalize it more. Okay. So we're going to put this on pause for a minute. So we were talking about the fact that taking 100% responsibility, and you were saying, how your response to something. So there's a formula that I think is really important. And if you can write this down and keep this handy until you get accustomed to actually understanding that the E will stand for event. So something happens in life. That event is going to trigger a response. Right. So how do you respond to something equals the outcome. Now, just today, and it could be other days you're going to see and hear about things, but I was reading an article today where a person got fired because there was an event that happened, took his son to an ice cream store to get a milkshake, and told the clerk that was making the milkshake not to put in any peanut butter. He didn't happen to mention that his son had an allergy. He just said no peanut butter. So this was some type of milkshake that would normally have peanut butter. Anyway, what happened was the clerk, because we also do things out of habit, and we're going to talk about habit in some future episode because habits can make or break your goals even.
That's for sure.
So sometimes we do things without thinking. And so this clerk happened to make the milkshake and added the peanut butter because that's something normally that would happen. And the child had a reaction because they had an allergy and ended up going by ambulance to the hospital. Well, the parent was so upset because his response was to go and have a rant at the clerk who made a mistake. And I don't know about you, Andrea, but I've made mistakes all my life. I mean, I don't do them intentionally. That's why they call them a mistake. Or I've had accidents and people say, you're so accident prone. Like, why don't you smarten up? Well, you don't do it on purpose.
Well, you could understand the father's reaction because it could have been life-threatening, but obviously there was a miscommunication between him and the clerk. He should have said outright, my son is allergic to peanut butter.
And that might have
triggered something. And, by the time he turned around to make it and, didn't remember or just didn't understand, he made the mistake. But I understand the father's rant, but he could have done it probably in a different way.
So because of that rant, he kept going on, and he said a lot of things in the rant, not to say, oh my God, you almost killed my son, but started with the name calling and everything else.
Oh.
And his response was really, I understand because you're a parent, you could more or less empathize with this parent almost losing their child, that you would get so enraged that you could have your emotions take over.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But what happened, because this event and the response that this gentleman gave to the clerk, the outcome was he lost his job.
Wow. Well, nowadays you have to be so careful because there's so many people with cameras and just waiting to film
And
something.
it's true. And although I don't think this person probably is like that in normal life, that he would normally say bad things to people or be name calling. I think sometimes as a parent, and I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine he did it out of being scared
for his child, right? And frustration that really, what could he do about it? And maybe angry at himself for going to this ice cream store in the first place and ordering something that might have peanut butter in it. For myself, I wouldn't even go near it, or I'd have an EpiPen on me or whatever the case might be. But yeah, it's too bad that he felt the need to do that.
And I think that sometimes, and in life, those kind of emotions can take over everything that we're not normally that kind of person, but it can take over. But now, when you know the outcome that could happen because you got emotional, you have to start thinking even that split second before. If I count backwards, from 10 to 1, I could calm myself down maybe enough.
Yes.
But everybody has to have now this little trigger when they feel like these emotions are going to take over.
Right.
Because even when we talked about the fact that how people respond, your response to any event means that there's going to be an outcome, and that outcome could be good, that outcome could be bad. But if you know that when this event is going on, you can't blame now, and this is where it comes back to 100% responsibility for you, your life, and the life of your child. Because, Andrea, like you said, you may have been better prepared if you knew your child had an allergy that was so severe that you would carry an EpiPen. But what you might do is, again, make sure that whatever it is something you know that would not normally ever be in that particular product. So if you're buying vanilla ice cream and you're using that as your milkshake, I've never heard of a vanilla milkshake having peanut butter in it unless you say, oh, can I have a big spoonful of peanut butter because I like that with my vanilla milkshake. A clerk would never make that mistake because it's not normally a traditional thing. So when you're out there in life, how is it then that you can blame somebody else for something that you did because you ordered it? And yes, you ordered it and said no peanut butter. You didn't explain that your child had a high allergy, but you also got something that was so closely related to something that would normally have peanut butter.
And maybe as a parent, you could have tasted it just to be sure.
And that's a great idea as well. Always, again, because you're taking responsibility for your child, for what you're giving your child. Well, when you think about that in other parts of life, and people always want it, well, I have a really bad boss and, I got a bad performance review because the boss just doesn't like me. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
If you really knew that you had problems with the boss, there's a couple of things that you can do because, again, your response to the boss being negative towards you, you might want to go and have a conversation.
Definitely.
But it's also in the same realm as a parent. You must have a lot of situations where your kids want to blame something or somebody else, and you try to teach them that they have to take responsibility.
I had a lot of situations like that, especially in school with teachers, and that's what I would do. I would a couple of times call the teacher and ask for a one-on-one, and I would say, instead of getting angry, yelling, I'd say, I see that there seems to be a problem here. Like, is there an issue with my daughter? Do you have an issue with my daughter? Because, last year she was doing fantastic and now this year everything's dropped. I don't know what the problem is. And then we talk it out and I found out the reason for certain things and I was able to act on it, change the situation. And within a month, everything was up and running smoothly again. And that's what you have to do. You just have to ask the questions without anger because everybody gets a chip on their shoulder when you attack. And that is the worst way to respond to any problem.
Actually, you just made me think about it because there's been a few times, I'll say more recently, and Andrea and I were talking, and actually when she mentioned that people having a chip on their shoulder, it seems like compared to when we grew up, there's a lot more people walking around with a chip on their shoulder. And we don't know why or where that comes from. But knowing that so many people do, we've had to kind of turn things around and always to find that nicer way to make those people feel like we're not there to attack anything.
Exactly.
And sometimes you have to ask for help and all that. But one of the things, again, recently that I was on vacation last week and actually went on a cruise, took 100% responsibility to say, you know what, whatever happens, happens, because I know I had a lot of people, Andrea, telling me I shouldn't be going on a cruise. A lot of people canceled. A friend of mine, because of circumstances, ended up canceling the week of the cruise. I was totally fine to go by myself, by the way. But anyway, took 100% responsibility. But while I was on the cruise, I was online. I did pay for the internet package. I wanted to stay connected because there was a particular little course that I had a good opportunity to do while I was on vacation. And one of the things,
course on vacation.
Yeah, well,
figures.
It's all about
professional women.
It's all about learning and growing.
And then you can teach me.
Right. And sharing this information with you and all of you out there, because we're women helping women. Remember, this is what it's all about. At any time, though, any one of us can find something that would help another person, it would be good. But one of the things that came out of this course was And I never always thought about it from that point of view. And when you talk about the fact that so many people do have chips on their shoulder, sometimes people want to hurt other people because they're hurting. And so they don't do it because they just want to hurt you. It's because something is going on
Hurting
internally.
them, they're hurting.
They're hurting. And the only way sometimes they can feel better about themselves because they're hurting so much is to hurt somebody else and make them feel pain like you're feeling pain.
Well, you know what, Linda, it's also when you're hurting, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Say you're having an argument with your husband or your child, and you're so angry about something, and then you kind of, walk away. Think how hard it is to come back and say, I'm sorry, or let's talk about it. So, and that's with someone you love. So imagine a stranger who's hurting so bad. They can't be nice to people. They don't feel good inside. So you can't give out good if it's not in you, so you understand, and so the way to get to those people is just to be kind, to be nice, to be soft. If they come at you and they say, oh, what are you doing there? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to come here? Things like that. It makes a world of a difference, but I know it's very difficult when somebody comes at you hard to not respond in the same manner.
Because the way you respond is going to make a difference on that outcome. And if you respond in ways that Andrea's talking about, being kind, having a smile, apologizing, it doesn't hurt you, but it might make that other person feel so much better.
Absolutely.
That they literally, for the next person, will find that they have a little bit more tolerance and stuff. And maybe when you're kind to somebody, then other people will respond in kind.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you could go through life or experiences just through your day, basically fighting with everybody you run into contact with.
Right. Exactly.
I remember I was driving down the road, and when you're not familiar with certain areas, you're a little bit more cautious. You're a little bit more cautious going into an intersection, going through. So I actually was trying to move over, and then I was going to be going into a left-hand turn. But I guess even when I originally was doing my right-hand turn, I was doing it on a red light, but it was a double lane, and I was being a little bit cautious because traffic can come up so quickly that I just didn't want to take the chance. And so I was really being careful. But the guy beside me was in such a hurry, and he was in this big truck. And he was kind of like, if you can't drive, then, get off the road, and you should give your car to my wife. She's a better driver. And going,
no way.
He was doing a rant.
Wow.
And instead of responding in kind, because one of the things that I think with being friends with Andrea, a lot of the things and her calmness is rubbing off on me, because I can tend to be that aggressive back. And I'm learning myself. It's better, because they always say you get more with honey than with vinegar. I'm trying to be that person.
Right.
So in the end, because the guy had rolled down his window, now we're side by side in the two lanes, and he's ranting at me. And I just smiled and I said, I'm really sorry. I'm not familiar with this area, and I just wanted to be careful. Anyway, and then he eventually put a smile on his face, and he went off. And the thing is, if I had fought back, he would also have had his anger even more up, and he would be more aggressive on the road and towards other people maybe he's meeting, during the day.
That's right.
But I was
You
able
probably calmed him right down.
Got him to a point where he smiled at me and said, have a great day.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh God.
See?
Because
wonderful.
You don't want to be confrontational just because somebody else is confrontational.
Right.
And
why
again,
ruin your day?
Exactly.
Why ruin your day?
And that's what would have happened, because it could have upset me to the point where that's what would have carried through the rest of my day.
Absolutely.
And everything would have been the bad vibes coming, instead of being actually feeling like I made a friend, even though I don't know and will never see the person again.
You probably felt even better
Yeah,
after that.
I
It
did.
lifted you, like,
It did, and it made, because I was getting into the evening part of my day, and it made me feel much better. Not that I wanted to go home and rip somebody's head off, because I was upset because somebody upset me. I
right.
took the responsibility to say, you know what? Even though he's angry, he's got that reaction, it doesn't have to impact my life to that degree. I did what I thought was responsible in being careful.
And you could also understand his little feelings of aggression, because he knows where he's going. He knows where he's got to be. And here's this woman, slowing him down. So you kind of see where he's coming from, because it happens to us too. Like,
Yeah.
we'll be driving and somebody will be like, this way or that way. So that's also what you have to think about. You are messing up his day, not because you mean to, but he thinks you're just maybe an idiot, like he said, you don't know how to drive. But then after, when you both kind of talk it out,
Yeah.
it worked out.
And sometimes though, I feel, and again, it's just my feeling, it's my opinion, but sometimes when people are in big honking trucks, they figure they own the road. And anybody that's going to mess with them, they get upset.
Yeah.
But it's just,
Those are some
again,
big trucks out there.
yes, and more today than ever. And I can't believe it with the gas prices being as high as they are.
Right.
But the whole thing in life, and this will happen every day, all day long, you're going to have events that go on, but your response is going to equal the outcome. So if you want a good outcome, no matter what it is,
Mm-hmm.
then your response has to be more positive,
Right.
more calming,
Right.
put a smile on your face. Take the responsibility to say, they may be having a really bad day. There's circumstances
That's
they
right.
may be going through that we don't understand. So I'm not going to
try to think of that.
right, and not to add to fuel to the fire.
Exactly. Or just walk away. There's no need to confront anybody for reasons that are really not important. If it's your child, your husband, and it's things like that. But out on the road, out on the street, you know what? You might not see them again. They're upset. You're in a store and they walk by you. You just say, okay, have a good day and forget about it. Just forget about it.
And that's a good philosophy. But one of the things that you said that we've learned all of our lives was just walk away.
Walk away.
Because that whole thing as a child, sticks and stones will break our bones, but names will never hurt us. Because it really can't, because if it hurts you, it's you wanting it because you feel like you deserve that.
Right.
But really, you're master of your own life. You're master of your own destiny.
And your emotions.
And your emotions. And if you take 100% responsibility for anything and everything that you do, because it's all within your control, if you need to walk away, walk away. If you need to go and have a conversation, have the conversation. But don't go in there ready for a fight.
That's right.
Go in there to ask the questions.
That's right.
Did I
done
do
it many times
Right.
times in my life, like with family and friends. And if I know someone's upset with me, I will, pick up the phone and say, I understand you're upset with me. Can you explain to me why? It doesn't hurt. And ultimately, we work things out many times. And you move on with life. So you don't have these lifelong grudges that so many people seem to carry. And I mean, I still have some issues with certain people, but I'm open, I'm ready. It's totally up to them, And
Actually, and that's another good point that you're making, because so many people I find today will throw away friendships and other things, business associate problems, whatever, but they're willing to throw away years of really good connections, communication, and everything, because maybe one little thing ticked them off that they can't get past. And again, if it's your life, is that how you want to live your life? Always holding on to grudges? Because for the most part, the other person goes and continues on with life,
Right,
and you're the one hurting.
right, because they might not even know they offended you.
That's another
Yes.
great point.
And another point is, a lot of times you listen to somebody else. Somebody said, oh, do you know she said this about you? Well, find out if that's true. Pick up the phone. I've done that also. Picked up the phone and said, hey, I was talking to so-and-so and they said, you said this. What? I never said, so you get to the bottom of things. Don't let them fester and fester. Like it's just not worth your, how would I say, good mood, your peace and contentment. It's just not worth it.
It's true, because again, if we're masters of our own life, why do we want to live moping around because we feel like this person hates us or something else is going on? And it's like, it's life,
Right.
but you have to find ways to let it go. And one of the first ways is to deal head on with it. Like Andrea said, if she knows something is going on, then she's going to confront it. And I know she's told me over the years a number of times, she's called somebody up or invited them over and says, we need to talk about this. Cleared the air, but it cleared everybody else's emotions.
Right.
So that they can go on living a good, comfortable, relaxing, and happy life.
Right.
Because again, happiness is what we control.
Right.
Sometimes people.
And it should be our goal in life to be happy.
Yes. The Buddhist people believe in happiness.
Right.
Can you imagine if we all are in a happier mood and how much better we would get along with everybody? How much better the whole world would be?
Oh,
how
yes.
much easier our jobs would be?
Right.
Everything, because how can you be angry if you're happy? If you're happy and you're a happy person and you're spreading this cheer, sometimes the person that you're spreading the cheer to is all of a sudden like smiling. And sometimes people say, what happened to this person? Because they're always such a grouch. They always have such a serious, face on them that they look like they're going to bite your head off. But really, happiness is what we should strive for.
Absolutely. And spreading it.
And spreading the happiness. And I think to be successful in life, whether it's in a job, or just being a good parent or a good friend or a good partner, you've got to be happy. And when you're happy, you'll do a lot more happy things for people. And in kind, they will respond back. Because you don't usually get a lot of people.
Or you keep at them until they do get happy. Like my daughter, when she gets in a mood, my husband and I, we kid with her and joke with her until we get that smile.
Because it's always a better way to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you have a happy environment, a happy work environment. I mean, then you say life can't get any better. Doesn't mean that you don't have problems. It doesn't mean that, money still, may be an issue for you, or, the career that you're trying to strive for, you still haven't gotten. We all have problems. That's never going to change, but it's how we deal with it. Taking the responsibility and knowing that our happiness is going to help us get through life.
Definitely. Because the happier you are, the more you can do, the more people want to be around you.
Yeah.
People that could help you.
Exactly.
Realize your goals. And if you're miserable, then I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to work with them or
that's the thing.
Help them. But when you're happy and you're always doing the right thing, no matter how you feel, people respond to that. They want to help people like that want to help themselves.
True enough. And it's funny, I have to end this with a nice little story. I'm taking Spanish, and I've been taking Spanish lessons every day for close to 2 years now. I have not missed a day. I'm on day 667 days, I think, straight.
Wow.
And that was the other reason I had to get the internet, to be honest, because I had to do my Spanish for the week. Otherwise, I would lose my streak.
The competitive nature.
It is the competitive nature, for sure. But one of the stories in my Spanish was this young lady that was going to apply for a job. And there was a young man that was also applying for the same job. And the man was so negative, and he was just being like, competitive to the point where he was always looking for ways to put down this young lady, which he didn't know, but he'd always try to say, well, I do this, and almost like, she wasn't good enough.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
Exactly. And then he started insulting the way she dressed, and she was being very economical the way she was dressing and everything. But anyway, the point was this went on for a few minutes in this outer office. And all of a sudden now the person that was interviewing the two of them came in and said, I heard your conversation.
Whoa.
Now, what the boss took out of it was the stuff that they did for the environment, because this was really to be, you needed to be environmentally friendly in all the things that you did. And this was where they were trying to one up each other. She wasn't as competitive as he was in this particular scenario. But anyway, so in the end, the boss was hearing the good things about the conversation and said, you know what, instead of one, I'm going to make it two that I'm going to hire. You can both work for the company. And the young lady said, will I be working with him? And so the boss said, yes, you'll be on a team to work together. She said, well, thanks, but I don't want the job.
Wow.
And she didn't take the job, even though she needed it, because she didn't want to work with a person she felt could be bad for her during the day, every day that she would have to spend 8 hours with.
She couldn't be productive enough, probably.
That, and he may make her, or he could sabotage the things that she is trying to do. But the point is, sometimes we go through life and we accept certain things and we're so unhappy.
Right.
And this one person could be the reason all of this is happening. And if you don't clear the air with that person, or it's impossible, then sometimes you have to take that responsibility and make a change.
Right.
As hard and as difficult as that could be, sometimes it's in your best interest, because sometimes stepping back means going forward. And you can do a big forward just by taking that change and saying, okay, because you're not
for me.
It's not because you're not acting and working at your most productive.
She could already feel
Yeah.
that it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah.
So why pursue it and live maybe a month of pure agony to realize what she already knew?
So this brings me, I thought it'd be the last story, but I have to tell you, this brings me to another thing. In relationships, sometimes women will be in relationships because they think, well, having some person in my life, a partner, is better than no partner at all.
Huh.
And I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine. And because, I've been single for many, many years, and I've gone on a few coffee dates. But normally from the first coffee date, I know whether or not there's going to be a second time that we'll meet or a second time we'll talk. But sometimes, like I said, I've met a lot of women that they say, well, it's better to be in a relationship than not at all. And I'm like,
Wow.
No, I like my own company enough that if it's not somebody that will enhance my life, what's the point?
Right.
So sometimes you'll get this person that will give you so much information on the first date that you have to make a decision. And I know sometimes it's hard for people to make decisions because, sometimes you might think, well, maybe I got to give them a chance. And yes, that's true. Maybe you do. But sometimes you have to say, okay, with the information I have, do I want to pursue this relationship? And the guy could have a lot of great qualities, but with all the other things that he comes with, or she comes with, whatever, the baggage that they come with, is it something that I really want to put up with? Now, at this stage of my life, I say, I don't want to put up with a lot of baggage. I can put up with some because everybody has some baggage. But I have to take that information because they gave it to me all at once. It's like verbal diarrhea. And it's like, okay, now what? So what's going to be my outcome? And so my reaction is to say, this isn't a match. And, all the best in the future, trying to, whatever. But if I could give you one piece of advice, save some of the information for future dates, because then you get tied into that person that you might think, I can deal with it because I like this person so much. You've had a number of outings with them and you think, I can overcome anything.
Right.
And you do. But if you take the information and then you try to correct or fix or whatever that person because you want to make it better for you, then that's wrong.
That is wrong. That never works.
It never works. And yet you say you could stay in the situation fighting all the time just because it's better to have somebody to fight with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
No.
it's not good for either one of you. And it's really not good for your self-esteem if you think about it.
Definitely not.
Because you think you're not worthy. And women, let me tell you, you're all worth it.
Definitely.
Don't ever let anybody tell you that what you want to be, what you want to have, how you want to live, who you should be with is correct. It's what you want. And you have enough up here to make those decisions that's right for you, maybe right for your family, because sometimes women will be with kids and involving with somebody that is not good overall. If your friends are telling you that and you're not listening, at least have the courtesy, because if these are good friends of yours, there might be a reason because you're not seeing red flags that they
That's
are.
right.
Because ultimately you take the responsibility to say yes or no, but don't do that because your friend is saying he's crappy when you know he's got all these wonderful traits. But in the reverse, if he's got all these crappy traits and you think that you're not worth having a better person in your life, you have to start changing what's up here because
Definitely.
this is not for you.
No.
So if you want to be successful in life, keep tuning in. Episode 4 next week. And we'll be talking about the law of attraction and what you want to come into your life. So until next week, don't forget, share, like, subscribe, do whatever you can because we have a goal of 10,000 followers.
Oh.
So until next week.
We'll see if it happens.
Yep. Success.
Have a great week, women.
For sure.